Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Jack Wolf Knives Scuffle. Specifically, this is the Blade Binge Dark Mode exclusive edition. It is exactly the same price as the other ones, which is very high. We'll talk about that. But this is a very cool knife. There is a lot to love here, and I can completely and totally understand why so many of you have told me you gotta try a Jack Wolf knife. I believe, as far as I can tell, the idea with a lot of their models is to combine some of the more traditional aesthetics with modern elements and modern materials. And this is not a new thing, but a lot of companies just kind of end up with, in my opinion, boring products. This, polar opposite. I find this to not be boring at all. It's very, very cool, and it's obviously a super high quality item. It is available. I will link it down in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Thanks to Blade Binge for supplying this for review. And please make sure to follow me. No, not follow me. No, I've already said that. Please make sure that your notifications are turned on. A lot of stuff to say. Gosh darn it. It's tough being a YouTuber. You gotta say stuff and remember stuff, and you gotta point the camera at the thing, and oh, woe is me. Let's go ahead and do some some specs. Overall length of the Scuffle coming in at not quite 8 inches. 7.85 inches. Blade length coming in at 3.5. Cutting edge, little over 3 1/8. How about some size comparisons? Any custom skills in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. So up against the 8010 and my own Excalibur. It's not a small knife. It's just smaller than these two. These are 8.5 inch knives, so they are a little bigger. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. It's kind of in between. It's almost perfectly in between these two with a little bit of a more compact profile. And then finally up against the Benchmade Grip Tool, in this case the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. While it is about exactly the same overall length as a Hogue Deca, it is noticeably more robust. How is the action? The action is very good and very, very satisfying. Nearly fall shut, and it will absolutely break in and become fall shut over time. No double clutch or anything like that. The detent is very good. You can push button it. You can light switch it. Right, all of that. You can even use this fuller that has been, it's been made accessible. So many times these slots and holes and grooves, you just can't access them. Realizing what I'm saying. You can't get your finger. It's hard to deploy the blade with the part of it that is designed, or it looks like it should be accessible to deploy it, because they tuck it underneath the scale or whatever. It's not the case with this knife. Reverse flicking it, yeah, it's awesome. Feels really good. Who the heck is the OEM for Jack Wolf knives? Maybe someone has figured it out. Maybe somebody has said it, or maybe they have worked with a couple different OEMs, but I don't think it's actually public. Now, this is pretty common. Sometimes OEMs have like NDAs with certain brands, and sometimes it's like the entire product line, or sometimes it's specific models. Why? Who knows? I think it's ridiculous. We should be naming the OEMs that make things. If you made it, you should not try to hide the fact that you made it for some sort of weird cryptic reason. Like, if you made it, then put your name on it, right? I don't understand. I have no idea who the OEM is. It would not surprise me in the slightest if it was Bestech, even Riot, right? A lot of these OEMs, a lot of their work kind of runs together. Wouldn't surprise me at all. If you know, you can make it known down in the comments. Don't guess, like, you actually, back it up with a source. But if you know, you can name it down there. If Jack Wolf Knives wants to actually say it, then they can put it down in the comments as well. It is definitely a Chinese OEM there, no question about it. But whoever it is does a really good job. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It is slightly, it's a decent amount thinner. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. This is a very compact and easy object to carry in terms of just the shape of it, the total amount of space it takes up, and the weight for sure. Let's go ahead and weigh it. What are we looking at for materials here? This, if I am not mistaken, is actually made out of S90V. This particular one is a DLC coated S90V, which is very, very cool. I like S90V more than M390, but there's a million different opinions there. Given that pretty much everything is in MagnaCut these days, I kind of, even though S90V is far older, it's always kind of nice to see S90V instead of MagnaCut. I think MagnaCut is definitely like the most well-rounded product out there, but S90V will absolutely blow its doors off in terms of edge retention. It all comes down to preference, right? And a lot of us, get interested in certain steels just simply because we see less of them. Not necessarily because it's going to apply better in our day-to-day life, right? This knife is massively overkill for the vast majority of people. So what I'm saying there is that my reasoning is, it's not based in any real logic there. I just like to see S90V, right? It's a nice blade steel we don't see as much of. But anyways, S90V, very thin hollow grind there. We have titanium, and in this case, we have that sort of Tiffany blue or robin's egg blue carbon fiber there. Titanium pocket clip and titanium backspacer there. Very, very cool. Let's go ahead and weigh it. There is a little bit of milling for weight reduction. So we have 3.6 ounces, very good, nearly a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of the weight to blade length ratio. It is a bit butt heavy, and I think that's just because there's so much material here versus the amount of material that's in the blade. You end up with a pretty aggressive hollow grind there, so a lot of material removed versus flat grind or whatever. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. I think that pivot is actually a T10. Let's take a look here. Yeah, that's a T10 pivot. That's nice. I like that a lot. And then your body screws here are almost certainly a T8. Let's just check it. Is this a T8? I feel like that's a T8. I don't know why it doesn't act like it wants to fit immediately. Oh, yeah, it is. I'm sorry. I'm just being dumb. So T8, and then you have a hidden screw for the pocket clip. There's probably also a screw in here for the lock bar insert, which I should have had my flashlight out so that we could take a look at that. But that and the hidden screw for the pocket clip is probably a T6. I don't know where the flashlight is. It doesn't really matter. You're probably not going to remove the pocket clip unless it's absolutely necessary for disassembly. Either way, it's very simple disassembly, right? You just take off the body screw here and then you remove the pivot, and you should be at least, have access to the inside. And it's a simple sub frame lock. So really pretty straightforward. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness here real quick. Blade stock thickness is 147 thousandths thicker than I would have guessed. Okay. Meat and potatoes time. This is a cool knife. It looks cool without leaning too far into modern or too far into, the traditional look. It's got a blade shape like an old school clip point, for sure. But the way that it's ground and the fact that it's an S90V DLC blade that's hyper precision, it just looks really cool. It goes with the handle. This is a comfortable knife. The jimping here, and because of the angle of the flipper tab, it's sort of like angled down. So if you're choked up, that little, flipper tab kind of grinds into your finger a little bit, but not bad. It's not so much that it's really bothering me too much. Edges are beveled, really nice. The titanium itself is also, to my knowledge, DLC coated. Could be PVD, but I believe it's DLC coated in this case. Not the other, there are other versions of it that are not coated. And the carbon fiber always looks nice. I always like the dark mode versions of these knives that are sold exclusively through Blade Binge. It just looks good. There's not a whole lot of billboarding. We just have the logo here, and on the other side we have the designer's initials there, and that's pretty much it. Jimping extends out to a very, very usable zone. I like that a lot. Looks like you can choke up here. This isn't the most comfortable choke up spot ever, but you can put your finger there. That edge is just aggressively thin, and this is a joy to cut with. The factory cutting edge is awesome, super duper slicey, and you should be able to continuously maintain that edge, you know, pretty easily. I'll let you guys take a look at the plunge grind there. So really good. Not really anything else. There's not really anything else that I feel like I need to comment on aesthetically. The backspacer has two little jimping zones back here that are just barely creating additional traction. I'm not really sure what that's for, but you know, okay, no big deal. Pocket clip. It is a milled clip and it's only right-handed tip up. So sorry, lefties, you have to carry it in your right-hand pocket. Pretty high retention, but honestly, in and out of the pocket, not bad at all. And the pocket clip, I can't say I really noticed it. I think it's because my mind is on the flipper tab there. You have a... There it is. Okay. So on the inside here, yeah, just like I thought, you have a little screw there, and there's a little tab. So it does have a steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop. I really like the fact that this is a sub frame lock, meaning it goes underneath the scale. There's nothing wrong functionally. I mean, like, there's plenty of arguments, right? A titanium frame lock or an exposed frame lock of any type is fine. And it has a track record to prove that it is, you know, fully functional as long as you do it right. But I find it inferior to sub frame locks or fully covered frame locks because these are just a little easier for people to manipulate. And you don't have to think too much about where you're putting your fingers. If you put too much pressure on the lock bar, it's not going to deploy. Blade HQ used to be full of reviews from people who just didn't know that you cannot put pressure on a lock bar while you're flipping it. And so underneath these knives, people would be like, it's ridiculous. The detent, so I can't even open it, right? And when you see those nowadays, you know, it's like, oh, the poor guy. Nobody told him not to put his fingers on the lock bar, and he ended up returning it, right? And then the knife got a bad review because of it. Now, people who know better, they keep their fingers off the lock bar, right? I mean, you could still put your fingers on this, but it's a lot harder. It's got a little lock stick here and there, by the way. But yeah, when this is covered, you're not even going to have to put your fingers on there. So whether you are aware that that can happen or not, it's just far less likely you're ever going to have to deal with that. You don't have to dedicate any amount of tiny brain power to remembering where to put your fingers because it's just covered, right? Also, some locks are a little different. I don't love the feeling of squeezing a frame lock and mashing that lock into the lock face of the blade. I don't love that. A lot of times, hard using, for example, a hinderer knife, bearing down on it really hard, I end up squeezing that lock in there, and sometimes I find that it's kind of hard to disengage. A lot of people describe that as a benefit. You're holding the lock in place so it can't disengage. I don't love that. I like the idea of a lock operating without the necessity of additional force or being held in place. I think the geometry alone should be enough to get a lock like this to work at least within a realistic environment where the user is not abusing it or, you know, the example I use is a gorilla smashing a rock into smaller rocks, right? For some reason, there's a large population of people on Earth who believe that this is how a knife should be used. And those people are idiots. I'm not even going to be nice about it. That's just stupid, right? You're just asking to injure yourself with the knife, right? Dumb. But a lock should operate on its own. A frame lock should operate on its own without anything else. It comes down to proper geometry and engagement, right? So I don't. That's another reason that I like these when they're done properly. Is that I like that it stops me from squeezing it further in. And not only making it difficult to disengage potentially, but also that does reduce the total lock life. Like you are wearing those materials in faster, the lock face of the lock bar and the lock face of the blade, right? So anyways, we've talked about that a million times. I like these. I think they're better is what I'm saying. Let's see. Stop pin is actually attached to the blade. This runs on bearings. I'm sure you could have guessed. The stop pins run on little channels. There's little channels carved on either side of the titanium. So 2 points of contact. That's nice. I like that. No blade play up, down, left, or right. A little bit of lock stick. I'm sure it'll work itself out. No double clutch. No pivot lash. I am going to point this out. I think it's mostly the detent ball that I'm feeling dragging on the frame, but you can definitely feel that. Moving the lock bar out of the way so it's just the bearings. Yeah, it's pretty smooth. I can feel them in there a little bit, but it's pretty smooth. I'm not going to say it's, oh my God, blow my mind smooth, but it's pretty darn smooth, and you're at least getting the fall shuttiness, which fall shut action can come in, it's on spectrum. Anywhere from really crappy, lumpy fall shut all the way up to buttered glass smooth, right? This is a cool knife. It's nice. It's a joy to use. It looks cool. How much is it? $350. Wow. That's way too much money. That's ridiculous. I thought, well, maybe it's the Blade Binge version, right? Because, Blade Binge has to get a cut. The designer has to, it's more than one person involved with this project, I think. The OEM, the head of Jack Wolf Knives, there's a different designer for this knife and Blade Binge. I said, okay, well, maybe that's why. Well, all of them are $350. Okay, so $350 sandwich construction. It is S90V. The base version of this knife was just plain titanium and satin finished S90V or whatever finish they have on. $350. What the heck? Kubi and Artisan Cutlery have many knives that are very, very similar, made out of the same materials, and arguably, I think Kubi's capable. That's another OEM. That would not shock me at all if Kubi was the OEM. But they've got knives. Number one, they have products that are also bafflingly overpriced. But they also have products that are utilizing the same materials with the same or, I think, more complex execution that are running $100 less. Realistically, I think the maximum price for this knife, considering you have the head of the company, whoever the OEM is, and the other designer involved, right? There's three parties. I think that these should be sold for about $280 maximum. Now, a lot of people are going to go, no, 200. Okay, companies who are mass producing, Chinese OEMs who are mass producing, and they have no one, they are the OEM and they're not working with a designer. Then there's one party there, right? Then, yeah, sure, right? But, I mean, these groups, these individual people and these groups and these OEM, they're not charities. They can't always match when it's the same materials. A lot of people go, this material, this made in China should be under this price. Yeah, you can paint that. You can draw a little picture with crayons, but that's, I mean, it doesn't show everything. It doesn't show all of the detail that's necessary to tell the whole story, right? Now I'm being a little nasty here and people are going to get a little fussy with me. And that doesn't matter to me at all. That's how I've always been. But I'm trying to be rational here and not just be like, it should be $150. Well, no, that's not possible, right? Even with this being manufactured in China. I think 275, 280 would have been more fair. I don't know where they're getting 350. I think Jack Wolf knives are pretty popular, and I think they know it. I think people get pretty excited. They typically, they seem to be small batch items, right? So there's a little bit of implied exclusivity or rare. I know people love to throw around manufactured scarcity and all that. I don't know if I really want to be that dramatic about it, but I think, just simply put, I think that they're just charging a little bit too much because they feel like they can. And you know what? If people buy them, then I guess they can. But compared to all of the other stuff that I've handled in this territory, which is a lot, there's not really anything here that screams $350 to me. It's a cool knife. I like how it looks. I like the materials, right? I like how it feels. I personally would not spend $350 on this. So that's pretty much it. If you feel like you would spend $350 on this, you will be happy with the product. It's a nice product, right? But don't expect this to be competitive with other knives that hover, like some of the best stuff that hovers around $350. No, this is going to feel very similar to knives that typically sell for between $200 and $275. So anyways, that's going to be pretty much it today. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram. My card is gone. I have no idea where the card went. Make sure to follow me on, there it is. Follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives. This chair is falling apart. Lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.